Lowell, thank you. We're going to get started now. Hello. Good morning. I'm Bruce Goldstein. I'm president of Farmworker Justice, a farmworker advocacy and litigation organization based here in Washington, D.C. I'm very pleased to be here today to introduce our next panel. We are excited to be streaming this next session through Facebook Live, so I wanted to say hello to all of you watching at home or in the office via Facebook. Welcome to our event, and thank you for joining us. We are broadcasting today from Unfinished Business, the Fair Labor Standards Act 80 years later, a conference hosted by the American Constitution Society and the National Consumers League. 2018 marks the 80th anniversary of the Fair Labor Standards Act, or FLSA, a law signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1938. At the time, the FLSA was landmark legislation that dramatically improved the lives of many workers in the United States. Today, we're gathered in Washington, D.C. to re-examine the FLSA, discuss whether it's meeting the needs of modern-day workers, and how it needs to be updated to better protect American workers. Before I introduce the next panel, I wanted to say a few words about how apt the title Unfinished Business is for the people that my organization serves, that is the farm workers who labor on farms and ranches in the United States. No greater application of that title can be made than to farm workers. Farm workers were in part added to the minimum wage in 1966, but they remain excluded from overtime pay. So there are some, for example, dairy farms, which, by the way, are year-round jobs mostly, where the dairy farmers say, I don't have enough workers, so you got to work 6 and 7 days a week, 90 hours a week. There's no disincentive for the farmer to employ people and require them to work 80 or 90 hours a week because they don't have to pay time and a half pay to farm workers. Working 70, 80, 90 hours a week is dangerous. It results in greater injuries and deaths. And farm work is one of the most dangerous jobs in the United States. The fatality rates, injury, and illness rates on farms, including dairy farms, is much higher than the average workplace. The lack of overtime for farm workers also interferes with family life and the ability to do anything else with your life, like read a book, go to a movie, visit your family. You just can't do that if you're working 70, 80, 90 hours a week. The roots of the exclusion of farm workers are in racism. The history of the Fair Labor Standards Act includes deals cut in Congress where Southern Democrats, working with some Republicans, said, well, we don't really support these laws, but I'll tell you what, we'll support this law as a Democrat if you exclude the employers of the African American people in the South as agricultural jobs and domestic workers. Those are the roots of the current exclusions that continue today. There are, of course, all these myths about the small farms, et cetera, but most farm workers actually work on larger farms. And in fact, not only are farm workers excluded from overtime pay, but farm workers on small farms are excluded from the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. You can be working in a mom and pop business in the suburbs or in a city, and you'll be covered by the minimum wage. But if you are in the same size business, but on a farm, you can be excluded from even the federal minimum wage. There's also ridiculous and dangerous exclusions of agricultural employers from child labor rules. Children can be employed in industrialized agriculture in dangerous jobs at younger ages than they can be employed in other occupations. In fact, they can be performing the same dangerous tasks that they would not be allowed to be performing in another occupation, but they're allowed to be employed to do that if they're in agriculture. There continues to be a problem with enforcement. And of course, employers who want to get away with violating the minimum wage are not stupid. They don't just refuse to pay the minimum wage. There are evasion schemes. And so what they do, for example, and this is often happening in agriculture, is they hire labor contractors or staffing agencies or other labor intermediaries. And the farmer, who may have 10, 50, 100, 300, 2,000 workers on their farm, says, I don't employ any of those farm workers on my farm. They're all employed by that labor contractor or a series of labor contractors, most of whom are never going to be able to pay a court judgment if they're sued. And the farm owner has paid the labor contractor a certain amount of money and said, pay the workers, get the job done, do it perfectly. Here's the specifications. I'm going to oversee that you do it. But I'm not the employer of the workers. And the labor contractor often doesn't have enough money to pay the workers even the minimum wage. Or if they do, they rip them off, engage in wage theft. And the workers are left without much ability to obtain back pay. So there's still tremendous problems with enforcement of even the federal minimum wage in agriculture. Now, we are seeing some progress around the country, most notably in California. The California legislature recently passed a law that over a period of 4 years will phase in overtime pay after 40 hours a week, a time and a half pay for agricultural workers. So what we'd like to see happen is other states adopt that and then build on that progress in the states and have Congress finally grant farm workers overtime pay and get rid of the other exemptions for agricultural workers. So I thank you for allowing me to talk a little bit about the unfinished business of the Fair Labor Standards Act when it comes to agricultural workers. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the next panel. Saru Jayaraman is the co-founder and president of the Restaurant Opportunity Centers United, or ROC United, and director of the Food Labor Research Center at University of California, Berkeley. After 9/11, together with displaced World Trade Center workers, she co-founded ROC, which now has more than 18,000 worker members, 200 employer partners, and several thousand consumer members in a dozen states nationwide. She is a graduate of Yale Law School and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. She was listed in CNN's top 10 visionary women and recognized as a champion of change by the White House in 2014, and also a James Beard Foundation Leadership Award in 2015. Saru authored Behind the Kitchen Door, a national bestseller, and most recently forked a new standard for American dining. Saru Jayaraman.
Hi, how is everybody? Good. Well, we are thrilled to be with you, thrilled in general because we're coming off the heels of a huge victory, thanks to some in the room, and also just generally kind of an extraordinary time for us and for our industry, and I think for workers. So quick background for those who don't know me, my name is Saru, as you heard. I co-founded the Restaurant Opportunity Center, or ROC, right after 9/11, together with workers from Windows on the World, which was the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center, Tower 1. On that morning, about 73 workers died, about 250 workers lost their jobs. And what we started, which was a little relief center post 9/11, has grown. We're actually, the numbers have been a little updated since you heard them. We're now about 30,000 workers, actually 500 restaurant owners, thanks to President Trump. We were at 200 when he got elected. We're now at 500 restaurant owners nationally who are working with us, and 23,000 consumer members, also thanks to President Trump. So we've been growing really rapidly, particularly since November 2016. And our growth really parallels the explosion in the industry. The restaurant industry right now is the second largest and absolute fastest growing private sector employer in the United States. We are almost at the 13 million worker mark. So 1 in 11 American workers currently works in the industry, and 1 in 2 Americans has worked in the industry at some point in their lifetime. I always love to ask how many people here worked in the industry at some point in your life as a young person. So just look around. This is actually a lower percentage than what I usually see, but this is still pretty high. Mostly everybody has some experience in this industry, and often it's not a very good one, because while we're the largest and fastest growing industry in America, we continue to be literally and statistically the absolute lowest paying one. So as long as we have had a functioning Department of Labor, every year we've seen a list come out of the 10 lowest paying jobs, and every year 7 of the 10 lowest paying jobs in America are restaurant jobs. And all of our research over the last many, many years, all the books we've written, all of it points as to why, how is it that, let's take a minute though, let's take a step back and say, we're talking about the second largest and absolute fastest growing sector of the US economy, proliferating 7 of the 10 lowest paying jobs in America. So even, bless you, if you don't care about this industry at all, what does that mean for our economy if you've got the absolute fastest growing industry in America proliferating the bottom of the barrel, lowest paying jobs? It means that we are very quickly nearing on that moment where we get from 1 in 3 working Americans working full-time and living in poverty, which was, what we said a couple of years ago. We're getting very close, inching closer and closer to 1 in 2 working Americans working full-time and living in poverty. And so what does that mean, even if you couldn't care less about these workers, about our GDP, about the future of our country, even about the restaurant industry, if half of working Americans can't afford to eat, let alone eat out? Who will eat out? Where is the future of any of our sectors if we are proliferating and growing the low-wage floor of our economy? And the reason for it is not organic, no pun intended, or I guess pun intended. It is not inherent. It is not because the only way to run a restaurant is to pay bottom of the barrel low wages. We know this because, as I mentioned, we now have more than 500 restaurants who work with us who actually pay livable wages. And we had one of them the other day say, I love to advance the radical notion that I do better because I pay better. My bottom line is better because I pay better. So it's really not inherent to the industry. It's really due to the money, power, and influence of the trade lobby, the National Restaurant Association, which we call the other NRA, which of course has been named the 10th most powerful lobbying group in Congress, and which, in doing research for the last book we uncovered, of course, has been around, even to our surprise, in various forms since emancipation. And that, in fact, tipping as a practice originated in feudal Europe. When it came to the States, it was rich Americans traveling to Europe, picking up this Downton Abbey. If you've ever seen Downton Abbey, you may see references to tipping, like something an extra or a bonus that a noble or an aristocrat gave to a serf or a vassal. That idea came to the States in the late 1850s, 1860s, when rich Americans were traveling and tried to show off that they knew the rules of Europe. And there was massive populist resistance to the idea of tipping. In fact, 6 states passed complete bans on tipping. And de Tocqueville visited America, of course, and wrote about great American democracy. And one of the things he wrote about was that America is such a great democracy because there's no tipping. And that populist movement, which was so successful, getting this passed in 6 states, spread to Europe. Labor movement picked it up in Europe, said this is a vestige of the feudal system. We reject it. We are professionals, which is why you see far less tipping in Europe. But here in the States, we went in the exact opposite direction because the other NRA's predecessor, the restaurant industry lobby, and the Pullman train company got together and demanded the right to hire newly freed slaves, not pay them anything, and let them live on customer tips. And that is where the idea of no wage, live on tips, comes from. That is where the idea of a sub-minimum wage or non-wage for tipped workers and living on tips comes from. So we started with the $0 wage, which is where we were at when the Fair Labor Standards Act passed 80 years ago, as long as tips brought you to the full minimum wage. And we went from $0 at emancipation to $2.13 an hour, which is the current federal minimum wage in the United States of America in 2018. And it is that base wage in a good 25, 26 states. Of course, it ranges between $2 and $8 in 43 states in the United States. And these 43 states follow this legacy of slavery. 7 states got rid of this system many decades ago, including California, where I live. We've done a lot of statistical regression analysis on these 7 states. If you listen to the other NRA, you think these 7 states have no restaurants, that they've all fallen through a sinkhole in the ground, that all jobs have been lost, and menu prices are sky high, and nobody eats out. I really invite you to come visit me in Oakland. Because we eat out more than you do. And we actually tip better than you do as well. And that's one of the other things the NRA loves to say. Oh, if we paid you an actual wage, nobody would tip you. We actually have higher tipping averages in those 7 states. So in those 7 states, we find higher restaurant sales per capita, higher job growth in the industry, higher job growth among tipped workers, higher rates of tipping, and 1/2 the rate of sexual harassment. Because here's the thing. In DC, in the 43 states with lower wages for tipped workers, 70% of tipped workers are women. They, of course, suffer from the highest rates of sexual harassment of any industry in the United States because they must tolerate inappropriate customer behavior to feed their families and tips because their managers are telling them, dress more sexy, show more cleavage, wear tighter clothing in order to make more money in tips. We have a new recognized industry segment that is official language called the Breastaurant, which is no longer Hooters and Twin Peaks, which is an actual restaurant company. Denny's and IHOP and Chili's are now called breastaurants because women are so encouraged to show their breasts. And that whole practice of women being encouraged to show their breasts can be cut in half simply by paying these women an actual wage, which is how it was in feudal Europe. In feudal Europe, serfs and vassals got an actual wage with tips on top. And so we are living in pre-feudal times in America. And so thanks to the Me Too and Time's Up moment, I was at the Golden Globes. There's been a lot of press. Thank goodness, Governor Cuomo has announced that he will make New York the 8th state in the union to eliminate the lower wage for tipped workers, which is a huge victory. We're very excited. It took a lot of pushing. Yes, you can clap. It's just the beginning. We're on the ballot, as Tripti will talk about here in DC for June. So those that live in DC will have the opportunity to vote to end this legacy of slavery. It's on the ballot in November in Michigan, and we've got legislators in about 20 other states introducing legislation to eliminate the lower wage for tipped workers over the next year. But even more excitingly, all of this fighting, all of this pushing back on the other NRA resulted in another huge victory, which is that about 5 months ago, the other NRA went to their BFF and member, Donald Trump, and said, let's propose a new rule to make tips the property of owners so that you get a Christmas bonus at Mar-a-Lago this year. And we mobilized 400,000 people, workers and their allies, to submit comments. We did actions in 20 cities across the United States, including a banner drop off the side of the U.S. Department of Labor here in Washington, D.C. that said, Trump, don't steal our tips. We brought workers to the to the Capitol here to the Hill and testified. We had 8,000 people make phone calls. And as a result, a couple of weeks ago, Secretary Costa said, yes, they're right, tips are the property of workers, as they were in feudal Europe. And that, of course, resulted in amazing legislators. And I really want to thank Joe Shantz, who's here, who works with Senator Patty Murray and the Help Committee in the Senate, who was an amazing friend and negotiator who put up with us pushing him late at night and on weekends saying, no, you cannot, give in. We have to stand for really good protections, and we got them. As a writer to the omnibus budget bill that happened last Friday, is it last Friday at this point? Yes. I mean, here's the thing. We call it moral jujitsu, using the force of the oppressor against them. That was Gandhi's term, not mine. But it's the idea that the NRA went too far. They've already been greedy enough, wanting to pay people practically nothing for over a century. And then they said, besides paying them nothing, we should be able to keep their tips. They went too far, Trump's own base reacted, and many of our folks reacted, and we were able to get something that didn't even exist prior to them going too far, which is very clear statutory language that never existed before, that tips are the property of workers. It is a huge victory, a huge indication that organizing works, and the reason for this panel, which is that all of our wonderful policy talk is only as effective, important, or will have any future as the workers who stand up for themselves and demand change. And clearly our example shows that even in the most oppressive moments, workers standing up for themselves and demanding change for themselves and being the protagonists in this 80-year history and in the next 80 years is the only thing that will ultimately win us victory. Not any of us, including me, speaking about these issues or writing about these issues or advancing these issues. It must be the workers themselves. So I'm very excited to bring to the stage several workers. If you all could come up, I will introduce you now. Dripti, I think it's Rosario, and Cynthia. Okay. Awesome. So we are so thrilled to have all of you here today. And can you still hear me? Okay. Probably can't see me. No? All right, well, I'll stand. So we're really thrilled to have everyone here today. And when we were planning this panel, we said we really want to make sure, oftentimes in a policy forum like this, we hear from workers at one point during the forum, and it's to hear their stories. And I said, no, it can't just be about hearing stories. We actually have to hear how workers are protagonists in their own struggle. So yes, we're going to hear stories, but we're also going to hear about the very real fights they're winning and the very real accomplishments that they're gaining. So the first question for each of you, if you don't mind sharing, is tell your story of how you work and the impacts of current wage and hour laws on your work, and then also tell us about your organization and what you're fighting. You want to start, Tripti?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tripti Patel, and I'm a member of ROC DC. I've been a restaurant industry worker for more than 6 years now. Working for the tipped minimum wage is really hard, and it's hard because it leaves me vulnerable to things such as sexual harassment, seasonal income, so that means I'm not able to save for unpredictable things, and I can talk about that because I actually shattered my left elbow last year and am now facing about $10,000 in medical bills, and because I'm a seasonal worker, I didn't have any kinds of protections from my employer. They didn't offer me any benefits like health insurance, so I've been really grateful to people who have helped me, like my parents. As a hardworking professional for many years, I think it's only fair that I get the same wages as other people who do similar work to me. I and my colleagues are worth 100% of that wage. And because of that, it's the reason why I decided to become part of the leadership and start fighting for one fair wage, not only in Washington, D.C., but across the nation. And I've been so excited that we were able to mobilize and organize to collect 40,000 signatures in Washington, D.C. to get on the ballot for June 19th to get one fair wage. In getting to that victory, we've talked to DC council members, telling them how important it is that we need one fair wage and what it really is like to work and live in the nation's capital as a restaurant worker. If the Costa rule had passed, it would have impacted me. I wouldn't have had any way to battle against my employer if they chose to keep my tips. we organized nearly 500,000 people to contact the Department of Labor and say, don't take our tips, don't make us more vulnerable than what we are. In the end, Congress listened to us, and now my tips are protected. Now I want to carry that one step further and say that we should all get one fair wage so that we are never left in a position that we have to be worried and stressed out about how we're going to make a living. Thank you.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Rosario, soy una trabajadora doméstica del hogar, Domestic Work National. Estoy aquí pues representando lo que es pues a las mujeres trabajadoras nacional. Mi historia es un poco de lo que hablaba la compañera al decir que como trabajadoras, ¿verdad?, de restaurantes, del hogar, muchas veces somos abusadas. Cuando yo recién vine, me recuerdo, trabajaba en un restaurante y ya mi manager, ¿verdad?, al igual era hispano que mí, pero tenía más poder que yo. Quería ya como cuando me dio las órdenes, lo que tenía que hacer, abrazarme y tocarme mis senos. En ese momento le digo yo, no, yo vine aquí a trabajar, no a ser abusada. Y dice, no, pero por eso puede ganar más. Entonces, en ese momento, pues yo exigí mis derechos, ¿verdad?, que poco conocía, pero así, eso creo que fue lo que me incentivó más a seguir conociendo más de que yo tenía derechos, no solo como trabajadora, sino como emigrante, como ciudadano, como residente, porque muchas veces los confundimos, que pensamos que porque no tenemos un documento podemos ser pisoteados. Empecé a organizarme y a conocer mis derechos con CASA y con las mujeres trabajadoras de la Alianza. Por eso hemos pasado más de 8 leyes. Digo las hemos pasado porque hemos estado frente a la Casa Blanca cuando estuvo presidente Obama, y hoy que está Trump creo que estamos más fuertes que nunca porque se han abierto nuevos centros de trabajadoras, ¿verdad?, afroamericanas, hispanas, americanas, porque todas somos vulnerables y no estamos, ¿verdad?, al margen de ser pisoteadas. Me gustaría trabajar más en una ley, pero porque la ley está puesta ya que estamos amparadas, ¿verdad?, como dice tanto federal, vea, como estatal y local, que tenemos derecho. Pero recordemos que hay empresas que contratan 15 personas y tienen derecho a una demanda, tienen derecho, ¿verdad?, a tantas cosas, pero nosotros somos más vulnerables como mujeres. Por ejemplo, yo limpio una casa, estoy expuesta a que mi empleador abuse porque estoy sola y no puedo hacer nada, porque si no hay de más de 2, 3, 6 trabajadoras, no tenemos el derecho. Muchas veces trabajamos solas y estamos dispuestas a cuidar a ancianos y a que, sin embargo, si tenemos parte de dormir y en el transcurso de las 8 horas de dormir se les antoja llamarnos por cualquier emergencia, nos levantamos y no nos cubren ese salario. Quieren abusar de nosotros, quitarnos el sueño que no nos están pagando, pero quiere que trabajemos horas extras sin pago. Entonces, siento que esta semana también fui abusada, porque fui a limpiar, ¿verdad? Limpié casi como por 2 meses. Me decía el Señor, la otra semana te pago. Y luego digo, voy a esperar. Luego me dice, es que tuve problemas, no me dieron el cheque. Voy a esperar, digo yo. La otra semana te paga. Luego le dije, no, ya no voy a esperar. Yo voy a ir a buscar un abogado. Inmediatamente a la semana me llama y me dice, Rosario, tengo tu dinero. Entonces, por eso estoy aquí, para decirles a mis hermanas que no es el tiempo de agachar la cara, sino es el tiempo de levantarlas, porque como dicen que unidas, ¿vea?, es una fuerza grande. Y yo siempre digo que si desde el 2005 lucho, entonces ¿por qué no ahora ponerme y enfrentarme contra Donald Trump? ¿Verdad? Porque él no me va a ganar, porque yo tengo derechos y conozco mis derechos y quiero que mis hermanas también se hagan parte de la Alianza Nacional para que conozcan sus derechos. Gracias.
Good afternoon. I'm a domestic worker, and I also represent the National Female Workers Union. And many of us, just like many of us, my story is kind of like the woman who just spoke. Now, I work in homes, I clean homes, and before that, though, I worked in restaurants, and so I understand her struggle. I worked in a restaurant where the owner was also Latino like myself, but he had more power than me because he was the owner. One time he came up and started to touch my breasts, and I said, "No, I'm here to work. This isn't right." And he said, "Yeah, but if it goes this way, then I'll be able to pay you more." I realized that at that moment I was exercising my right to protest that. So I learned that immigrants, citizens, residents, workers, everyone has rights, and they need to know that. We think that maybe because we don't have a document, we can let people step on us, but that's not the case. I feel like we have passed 8 laws, and I say we because we have been out in front of the White House during the Obama administration, during the Trump administration, protesting and fighting. And we're definitely stronger together. White, black, Latino, it doesn't matter who it is, all of us together, united. I want to keep working to pass more laws to protect us on a federal level, state level, local level. It doesn't matter. It's all very important. I mean, in some places, you have 15 people working there, and even with just that small number of people, they still have rights. The issue is, I feel that women are the most vulnerable to these issues. For example, I clean houses, and I feel like I'm more open to abuse and harassment because I work alone most of the time. Sometimes there are several of us, but oftentimes it's just me, and I'm working by myself. So say I'm taking care of someone, an older person, an elderly person, and they're, during 8 hours that I get to sleep maybe, they call me up and say, there's an emergency, you need to come in and work. I'm not getting paid any kind of extra hours, overtime hours for that. So I would say that this week, for example, I feel that I was abused in a way, and I'll tell you how, because I went to go clean a house. I'd been cleaning this house for about 2 months, working for the same person, and the person who I was working for kept saying, "I'll pay you next week. There was an issue. I'll have to pay you next week." And I was asking, when will I get my paycheck? So eventually, after this kept continuing, I said, I can't wait anymore. I'm going to have to look into getting myself a lawyer. But as soon as I said that, he finally coughed up the money and paid me. So I'm here because I think that together, united, we are so much stronger. And I say that so that my sisters and everyone can feel that they have some power to be able to fight this. Since 2005, I've been fighting, and especially now against Donald Trump and the measures that he's trying to pass. But I know my rights, and everyone needs to know their rights so that we can fight together, united.
Cynthia, in this first go around, if you could just focus for now on your story and what you guys are fighting for and organizing for. We'll get to the accomplishments in the next round. Is that okay?
Hi, my name is Cynthia Murray. I'm a 17-year Walmart associate and a founding member of our Walmart. I'm here today to talk about how we've together have stood up and started to make change for workers. And one of those ways is with our Walmart organization, technology, which is awesome right now at this point, which is really helping us to lead the way. What was your other question?
Just talk about what you've been fighting for, and if you don't mind sharing your own story of working in Walmart too, that would be great.
So I work in the fitting room at Walmart. Right now, they're making more changes and are publicly saying how well they're taking care of us. We shamed them for the fact that they were so proud of the fact that Walmart workers were paid the less money in the country. So now they don't want to say that anymore. We have won victories, and some of our victories are the fact that when we fought for $15 an hour, Walmart now, we were $7.25 an hour. Our minimum starting pay now is $11. And we know if we could change Walmart, that we could change the way it is for other workers besides us. And that's so true, because Target has stepped up and said by 2020, they will pay minimum wage of $15 an hour, which is awesome, right? So now Walmart has come up with a new plan to really get at workers and try to cut our hours, which is what they are doing. It's called Customer First. it's not customer first. It's profit first is what we're saying now, us workers, which is true. It's all about their profit. They're not trying to take care of their customers or their workers. But so that's why our fight is even more, and that we need other people to help us. We have found that in doing our organization that we built, that also other workers need to build organizations, and we all need to stand together as one. And we find that standing together as one is more powerful than one of us just standing out here by ourselves. Also, you have to excuse me, guys. So we invented what was called Work It, and this is used as a tool for workers. Walmart won't let you know what a policy is. They took our policy handbooks and they stuck it in a computer back in personnel. So they'll say to you, well, you can't do that because that's against our policy. So for me, I said to them, well, show me the policy. Well, you go back there and see it. I said, okay, well, I'll go now. And they were like, no, you can't. And I'm like, well, then how am I going to know what the policies are if you're not going to let me see them? So we built Work It. So a worker can go into the bathroom, and if they say to them, well, you can't do that, and they won't let them go back there and look at the policy, but they can walk into wherever they want to, look on their phone, and they can download Work It. Is actually in the App Store. So it's for Androids and other phones, and a worker simply can ask our robot, which is Watson, and us workers, which are actually the ones who will find the answer to your question, and we'll get back to you. If we don't know that answer at that moment, we would definitely, send them back through a text to them. So say that you can't go out there and you can't park in a certain place, which that's what they tell workers, you park in the back of the parking lot, which is dangerous for workers. There is a policy that says we can't park in the front of the stores. But so I said to my manager, you download it in black and white for me and give it to me because I want it. So now a worker can simply go into the bathroom and ask that question. Instead of being coached or getting points or whatever, they can now know and try to find out their way to fix it for themselves without, because management's not going to help them. They're not going to let us look at the CBL terminals to see what our policies are. So that was a really big thing that we built. We also know that right now, Facebook Live is a tool that we're using. So we're doing new things like we did an open door policy. So on Facebook Live, we put out there what Walmart's policy is. And so educating the workers and how to use the open door policy, which now we see a whole lot more of them are using it. And Walmart is like, darn them, they keep using technology, but it's at our fingertips. And so it just seemed a way for workers across the country to be able to come together. And that has been a real thing for us. We had fought for the fact that pregnant women were pulling pallet jacks and losing their babies, even though a manager knew they were pregnant. They would tell them, oh, that's just a phase you're going through. You'll get over it. But no, a woman losing her baby pulling a pallet jack, you never get over. So we brought this to home office, and we used our tools that we have to stand there and tell them, we no longer will endure this for any woman in the country. So as recently, they have announced a new pregnancy policy for us, and this was a great win for us. So we have more that we're working on, and I think standing together and being together is a powerful thing for all of us. Thank you.
Great. Well, each of you talked about big wins, which is important because we spend a lot of time in our world talking about how low the minimum wage is, how little it's enforced, how our rights are always trampled on, how little power we have, particularly in this administration. So it's really important, right, to talk about what we can also win, how we win it, and what happens when we win. So with Rock, you talked about getting on the ballot in DC and winning the big new protection in Congress. With the domestic workers, you talked about bills passed in 8 states to give domestic workers a Bill of Rights. With our Walmart we have this fabulous new app, but also you won wage increases and you also won paid family leave, right, for half of the workers in Walmart. So these are huge victories. I'd love each of you to talk about, you know, what it took to win those things, what the impact is when you win something like that, not on you personally, what does it mean to you personally to win something like that, but then what does it mean in terms of being able to get more workers engaged, inspire more workers? What does it mean more broadly to have wins like that? Do you want to start again?
So, I mean, basically what it took for DC locally to happen is, I mean, unfortunately it took the election of President Trump, and it awakened the consciousness of everyone in DC, not only in DC, but nationally. And that actually made me happy because now people started looking at me more as a person versus just as, you know, somebody who did a task for them. And the impact that it did is, I think it humanized me and my industry colleagues. Like, people actually wanted to know what it was really like when we worked in the restaurant industry. A lot of my patrons were coming in the restaurant, really wanted to know, like, is it really true that you guys really are making $3.33 an hour? And I would be like, yes, we are really making this. And people would be like horrified. People say, well, what happens if no one comes to the restaurant? Will they pay you? And I said, I'm actually lucky I work for a restaurant that will actually pay me the minimum wage if I don't make it in tips. I said, but there's a lot of people that don't have that benefit. And what it means in the long run, all these victories, is that it will actually take away service as a dirty word. I don't know when that happened in this country, but anyone who does service, such as Rosaria next to me, such as Cynthia down there, I don't know when it became, providing a service became a dirty thing to do. And that stigma needs to be removed. It shouldn't have been there in the first place. So overall impact, long run, is that we're going to be able to work with dignity, which is what we should have had in the beginning.
Thank you so much.
Bueno, a mí, en lo personal, la compañera hablaba del salario mínimo. En el 2016 me comprometí a estar todas las semanas presente en la alcaldía de Montgomery para que pasaran el salario mínimo, $15 la hora. Entonces ahí me tenían todos los días, hoy me recibían, pasado no, y ahí luchando. A mitad del año logramos pasar lo que era el salario mínimo con un voto de 4-1. Muy contentos todos, cantamos victoria. Lo que decía la compañera, hice un video en vivo, lo cual se volvió viral. Entonces toda la gente decía, me voy a mudar para esa área para tener el salario de que está en Montgomery. Pero una semana después, pues el ejecutivo, ¿verdad?, Legan, lo vetó. Dijo de que no podía hacer porque solo era un voto, no era mucha la diferencia. Entonces decidí yo, digo, no me voy a quedar, porque si ya lo ganamos, si lo teníamos, ¿por qué lo quitan? Volvimos a seguirlo peleando y seguimos adelante hasta que por fin lo ganamos. Tenemos el salario mínimo trabajando. ¿Por qué? Porque tengo compañeras, hermanas mías de la alianza que son meseras y simplemente ahora quieren explotarlas quitándole sus propinas, quitándole como en los aeropuertos. Entonces me parece una idea injusta. Entonces por eso yo decidí seguir peleando el salario mínimo con mis hermanas. ¿Cómo? Trabajando partes en la Florida, en California, en Los Ángeles, en Nueva York. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos unidas, somos hermanas. Cuando nosotros venimos a pelear a Washington, tomamos una acción y esa acción hacemos un compromiso que lo vamos a llevar a donde nosotros estemos organizándonos, porque eso se gana organizándolo. El salario me costó un año de victoria, porque al final obtuvimos la victoria. Como la compañera decía, van a recortar horas. ¿Por qué? Porque ellos quieren, porque no les conviene. Pero como decía mi compañera, hay parte de Nueva York o la Florida que ganan 24 horas la hora. ¿Por qué a nosotras como trabajadoras los quieren pagar 7.25 o lo que se les antoja a ellos cuando hacemos el trabajo igual? Yo puedo ser que arreglo camas. La maestra enseña a sus hijos, los niños de nosotros, ¿verdad? el que siembra, siembra los frutos. ¿Y a dónde van a parar todos esos frutos? ¿No es el mismo trabajo? ¿No es trabajo digno? Entonces, ¿por qué los quieren pisotear pagándolos lo que a ellos se les antoja? Por eso yo me siento orgullosa de seguir organizando, organizando y organizando.
To me personally, that I believe that as my friend here just said, minimum wage, it's very important, and I agree. In 2016, I spent days and days, every day I was outside of the mayor's office in Montgomery County trying to pass a law that would allow for the $15 an hour minimum wage. I mean, I was there for days fighting for almost half of a year, and finally they passed 4-1 on a vote. And we were all so excited. We recorded a video. It became a viral video. Everyone was so happy. People kept saying, oh, we're going to move to Montgomery County because now it's going to be so much better there. But then the executive, it said, well, it couldn't be that way, and it was just a vote, but that wasn't going to make anything concrete. So what did I do? I kept fighting. I kept fighting until we finally got the victory that we were looking for of having a legitimate minimum wage. Because I know that with my sisters of the Alliance and us working together, some of them are waitresses, and sometimes they don't get tips. Sometimes if they work, for example, at a restaurant at the airport or something, they don't get the tips that they need, and it's hard for them to survive off of that. So I fight for them, together with them, in Florida, California, Los Angeles, New York, because we are united. We're sisters, and we come together in DC, and we've committed ourselves to taking this to the Capitol and to making our organization be heard. It took a year for us to finally have that victory that we were looking for. But it's important to note that, as one of my sisters said, she brought it up to me and said, well, if someone in New York is getting paid $24 an hour for X job, why are we only getting $7.25 an hour? And if or whatever the employer decides to pay us for the same work, because that's what it is, isn't it? A teacher that teaches our children, that's a job. Someone who picks fruit, that's a job. Someone who makes beds, that's a job. So why aren't we getting treated like this is a dignified job? So I am just very proud of what we've been able to accomplish and what we will keep doing, and we will keep organizing, organizing, and organizing.
Solo quiero decirle algo más.
I just want to say one more thing.
Que la siguiente parada es Anápolis, para llevar el salario mínimo que también ellos allá tienen derecho.
And the next stop is Annapolis, so that we can raise the minimum wage there. They have a right.
So what have the victories meant for you, Cynthia?
Well, so the victories for me is that there's so many workers that were only paid $7.25 an hour. But we wanted Walmart to really not just stop at you give a worker 1 day a week. We asked for 15 and full time, and what we meant by that was we want you to give them their 40 hours a week. When I was talking about this customer scheduling is a way that Walmart has found to cut more workers' hours. So again, with Facebook Live, we were able to educate workers that if you only get a certain amount of hours a week and you're a 40-hour worker, that you can go and collect partial unemployment, which a lot of workers didn't know, so they started doing that. And now Walmart's like, whoa, hold on, we're going to have to pay some of that. So it was still a victory for us and a win. But what I really want to see is, so we've gotten to the point where Walmart now acknowledges minimum wage is $11 an hour for new workers. But the fact is, Walmart has a lot of long-term workers that are there 20 years and longer. So what about them? You gave them no cost, no increase whatsoever while you raised the minimum wage for the workers coming in. So now we're going to start fighting for them to raise the wages for workers that have been there like over 5 years, because we feel as though they also need that cost of living increase to live. It is a big victory for Walmart workers across the country. But not only that, we really said if we could change it for workers at Walmart, the rest of the country would stand up, like Target and the rest of them, and decide to start making the changes. To me, that was a victory when they all decided to raise the wages the day that Walmart announced $11 an hour for workers. So that made me feel really proud. And the fact that now managers got 12 weeks of pregnancy leave. Now Walmart hourly workers will have that as well due to us standing up and fighting. And so that's a victory.
Totally. All right. Is that 10 for the whole panel? Oh, for until questions. Okay. So I want to, last set of questions is around what's on the horizon, what's coming up in the future that you're working on and that we should be looking out for. And I'd love to ask it in two ways. One, both in terms of what you're working on in your organizations. You started to talk about that, Cynthia. But also what you're hearing from your fellow workers right now in restaurants, among domestic workers, in Walmart. Is there a sense of hope given all the victories? Is there a sense of change? Is there a sense that, we can actually, is there a feeling that we can win a lot more in this moment? Or if not, what can we all be doing to continue to make more people feel that we can win in the same way you've been winning? So what's on the horizon?
So frankly, what's on the horizon, and maybe a little bit of a shock value, but I mean, this is the best way to describe it. This is a revolution. It's actually happening. And the timing is right for it now. I think people had always sensed there was a little bit of an injustice that happens in the service industry, whether it's the restaurant industry, whether it's the domestic worker industry, or whether it's the customer service industry. People have realized, like, you can't constantly put your heel on someone and continue to grind it on them and expect them to not happen. So now, like, we are actually getting support now from the consumer, from the public. They're saying, you know what, this isn't right. We're a better society than this. It's time that people started being treated with dignity. It's time that people started getting a fair and livable wage. It's time that these people started getting some basic inalienable rights that we've all enjoyed and taken for granted, such as vacation, such as medical leave, such as the opportunity to push back against unfair practices in the workplace. Because before, if you were abused in your workplace, you just left, you just went somewhere else. Now the managers are starting to say, okay, you know what, like, we have to take them seriously. If we want to kind of stay around as an industry, we need to start treating our workers a little bit better. And what I'm hearing from my colleagues, because they know I've been involved with Rock DC and Rock National, when I told them that it is now part of the Fair Standards Labor Act, that tips actually belong to us, that no one can ever take that away from you ever again, some of my colleagues actually cried. They were like, wait, you mean like no one can ever take this away from us? We actually have solid legal recourse to get our wages back if someone steals them. I said, yes, it actually means something now. And now my workers are actually feeling a lot more confident at work. They're actually starting to feel safe, which isn't something that a lot of people in our industry feel when they go to work. They're always worried, is someone going to steal my tips? Is my manager going to play with my money? Now they don't have to worry about that anymore. So that's what all of this means to us on the horizon. It's just feeling empowered, starting to feel safe, starting to realize, like, you know what, like, we're going to start becoming professionalized. We are going to start getting recognized by, like, government agencies that we have protections.
Thank you.
Nosotros como trabajadoras domésticas estamos trabajando en organizar a la comunidad. Siempre damos talleres en diferentes áreas para que nuestras hermanas ya sean, conozcan sus derechos, familias completas. Especialmente hace como 3 meses decidimos abrir un Facebook Live y le pusimos el nombre Trabajadoras Domésticas del Hogar, donde muchas hermanas se han desenvuelto ellas mismas, ¿verdad? Contando sus historias, que han sido abusadas, y ahí mismo entran consejos, tips, de qué manera podemos ayudarlas unas a las otras, que ya hemos pasado por ese proceso. Entonces ha dado un gran resultado porque muchas han salido, han despertado, ¿verdad? Han salido de esa sombra donde ellas creían que era normal, ¿verdad?, que las abusaran, donde ellas creían que era normal que les dieran el sueldo que les diera la gana a ellos, si era normal que le dijeran límpiame la casa 2 veces al mes y después le dicen, ¿será que me la limpias mejor una vez al mes? Y después, ¿será que puedes venir una vez a cada 2 meses? Entonces, ellas han aprendido que esa es una explotación, ¿verdad? Porque si limpiamos la casa de ellos cada 2 semanas, ¿verdad? Entonces, tenemos un sueldo, por decirlo así, si ganamos $200 dependiendo la casa, son $400. Pero si a ellos les dicen, me la limpias una vez cada 2 meses, nos están robando, ¿verdad? Y nos están dando el doble o el triple de trabajo. Hemos aprendido el derecho también a enseñarles a nuestra comunidad que si en su empleo le dicen, esto tienes que hacer y está, por decirlo así, que hay que sacar un perro a pasear, ese es trabajo extra. Estamos enseñando los derechos, ¿verdad?, que como trabajadores tenemos, apoyándolos. Y eso ha funcionado porque tenemos folletos donde los habla de los derechos que tenemos, ¿verdad?, en caso de enfermedad y todo eso. El derecho que queremos llevarlo, como siempre decía, tanto federal como estatal, es el derecho de enfermedad y de abuso, pero que ya sabemos que pasa por 15 personas, pero a veces no trabajamos 15, trabajamos 2. Entonces siempre somos abusadas. Queremos que sea un derecho que se lo respete como trabajadoras domésticas del hogar.
We as domestic workers, domestic home workers, have organized, and what is important for us is to organize with the community as well, to reach out to the community. We've done different workshops in different areas so that entire families and, you know, our sisters from our organization know their rights. It was about 3 months ago that we decided to open a Facebook Live page that was called Domestic Home Workers, and many of the sisters were sharing their stories, their experiences, unfortunately stories of abuse, but also giving advice and support to those who were sharing these stories. And it had a huge impact. It really did bring results because many of our sisters were able to leave the shadows and realize that it's not normal to be abused on your job. It's not normal to not get paid a decent salary. And, you know, it's not normal to have, for example, if you're cleaning a house, you know, 2 times a month, and all of a sudden they say, well, you can clean it better 1 time every 2 months. That's robbing us, because if you clean it every 2 weeks, it depends on the size of the house, maybe that's $400. But if it's only 1 time every 2 months, we're being robbed. We don't get the work that we need. So we've learned to, you know, show the community and to reach out to the community of what this actually means. For example, if I'm cleaning a house and the owner says, well, oh, we need you to take the dog out too, that's extra. That's something extra. That's not part of the original agreement, original job. So what we do is we reach out and we teach other workers about their rights, and it works. We have pamphlets that talk about rights on a federal level, state level rights, in terms of sick leave and in terms of your rights in the case that there is some kind of abuse going on. So as I mentioned before, you know, it's different if there are 15 people getting together working and trying to advocate for their rights versus 2 people. And sometimes for us, we really are just a couple of us working, and it's harder to advocate for ourselves, but it's important. So what we really need is for people to respect us as domestic home care workers.
So I think for us is almost the same as these 2 ladies. We have built an organization, but we have built our community to stand with us and our allies, which are very important to change the direction for our labor movement. It's really important that we stand together and stand up. Our workers now have a voice and know they have a voice and know that there's only so much that management can do to them about voicing their opinions. One of my older workers who have been at Walmart for 22 years, she went to a meeting the other day and they were telling the workers how you can't do this, that, or the other, not even respecting them. And she stepped up and stepped forward, and she said, hold up. Y'all can't just bark orders at us and scream at us. We are individuals, and you're supposed to respect the individual. So at my store now and across the country, there's a lot of managers now that really truly understand that respect, you get more with respect, and respect is free. You don't have to pay for that. But our organization uses community Facebooks. So we have our own different little face groups for, like, the Northeast has one, and we have a general one that's called our Walmart community. But we are all planning a trip to Bentonville come June. So you should all look for that, and we need your support in supporting us to do that. But we made a declaration 7 years ago. 100 workers from Walmart across the country went. And in that declaration, we delivered to Walmart by hand. They wouldn't let the workers in the facility. We stood in the parking lot. But in that declaration, we told them the first thing that workers wanted was respect. It wasn't even money. So it tells you how they were treated. Very disrespectful. I'm talking about, you could be standing in an aisle talking to a customer, helping them, and they just come over and start screaming at you. And you're like, okay. So these were put in a declaration, and so we're going to go back and review our declaration with 100 more workers, and we're going to revise that and hand it to Walmart again. Because we do know that the more that you stand together, you stand up and use with technology we have now, that we are getting better results. And it's not just about Walmart workers, it's about all the laborers.
Awesome. So love to open it up to hear what people have to ask. Go ahead.
Okay. I say I'm departing a little bit from the theme of the FLSA and wondering how you're using the right to engage in concerted activity at non-union workplaces, which I imagine almost all of your workplaces are.
Yep. So I could start, and then, is that okay? Did you want to say something, Cynthia? So we've gotten a lot of the benefits of organizing without having to have some of the obligations. So we've been organizing workers for a very long time in restaurants that are less than 0.001% unionized nationally, and winning changes, policy changes in companies, and getting workers actually hired back or getting back pay when they're retaliated against in a campaign. And despite all of that, great activity, being able to use the rights that workers have to engage in organizing. Of course, the Restaurant Association has tried to get us labeled a labor organization for a very long time, and until now has not succeeded in multiple attempts. And beyond trying to get us labeled a labor organization, they have attacked us for the last 16 years in a number of ways. They got 3 congressional investigations into us, although now the leader of that, Darrell Issa, is no longer going to be in Congress. So I don't know, somebody else is going to have to lead those investigations against us now, which we're very proud of. They've put my children's pictures up on attack websites. They've taken out full-page ads in USA Today and Wall Street Journal, sending people to those attack websites. They've gone after our foundation funders and individual donors. At one point, they hacked into one of our funders' databases to try to stop funding from going to us. They've gone personally after some board members of foundations. They have tried to get our IRS status changed so that we can't receive tax-deductible donations. They've done any number of things, and I talked about moral jujitsu, and we've been able to, every time they do this, we've been able to kind of show them for the bully that they are and keep winning. And thus far, they haven't succeeded in anything. And to me, the tip rule is the greatest example of going too far and then us being able to win something really big as a result. So I think I would like to say what I feel so excited and so grateful to the organizers of this conference for having this panel in the middle of the day is that you know, you could have had a group of workers come up here and tell you how depressing the world of work is. and sometimes when you do national work or you work in DC, that's all you know right now is how depressing the world is. And I think what you're hearing is extraordinary hope. I didn't use the word revolution, Thrupti did, like extraordinary hope and movement of people engaging in concerted, protected activity in various ways and continuing to do it whether or not they actually have those legal protections or not. So I feel very hopeful, and I would love to hear you also talk about basically what the ask is, you know, how are you engaging in organizing and the right to organize, right, even if we're not unions?
You want me to
go ahead?
Okay. For me personally, the way I've been doing it is anytime like a colleague, an industry colleague has talked to me about having their rights oppressed or their wages stolen, I've told them how to get their money back. Perhaps probably what's moved me the most is seeing undocumented workers in the restaurant industry just being really petrified and feeling like they have no allies. And I've always told them, I said, there are resources out there. They will help you. They're not going to ask you about your papers. They're, you know, and a lot of it is intimidation, you know, reinforced by hostile restaurant owners because they don't know the language very well. They're told that if they do try to enforce their rights, that they'll be deported. And, you know, and I've always said, no, like, this is who you need to call. I'll give them the phone number, or I will put them in touch with someone. I've sent people to Rock DC, and I said, they will help you. I said, they will find someone who will help you navigate, you know, if you have a language barrier, who you need to talk to at Department of Labor. So that's how I've helped personally. You know, I've always informed my colleagues of what's happening movement-wise. I'll tell them what the National Restaurant Association is doing. I will let them know what Rock DC is doing. I will let them know if there is, you know, a rally going on. And I know it's been working, it's been helping, because, you know, there are people who are opposed to the June 19th ballot, and I'm keeping up with them. I know who they're organizing with, who they're reaching out to, because at the end of the day, our industry is pretty small, so you're going to hear about both sides of the movement. So, you know, and I've been respectful and pushing back, you know, against like the opposition. I said, well, you know what, have they read the bill? Have they done this? Have they done that? So I've kind of gotten people to start thinking about, you know, both sides of the argument, mainly ours, and kind of saying, look, you don't know what their side is saying, so here's what our side's saying. Go to the website, here's the information, here's what the bill says. So that's what I've been doing on my end, personally.
Nosotros tenemos a lo que es Jaime Contreras, que es del sindicato, que fue el que pasó el minimum wage de 15 horas la hora en el aeropuerto. Y como decía la compañera, a veces veo los 15, 16 miembros del sindicato y yo misma estoy tal vez detrás del panel y yo misma digo, yo fui parte de esa historia. Porque solo el sindicato no lo hace solo, él solo lleva mi voz. Y yo digo, wow, el sindicato está ahí siendo honorado, pero fueron mis zapatos que fueron desgastados. Porque siempre yo digo, como dije la compañera, si yo no lucho, si yo me quedo esperando a que el sindicato haga el trabajo tal vez que yo puedo hacer en mi comunidad, pues entonces no hubieran leyes, todos fuéramos pisoteados, pero gracias a esa voz que Dios me dio y la estoy poniendo en práctica, es como organizo. Si a mí me dicen, Rosario, hay una marcha para hacer esto y va a beneficiar a los trabajadores, y no importa si son tal vez trabajadoras de un restaurante y yo no trabajo en un restaurante, pero yo digo, mi gente, vamos a llenar 60 personas en este bus. Y no es un bus, llevo 3, 4 buses de mi comunidad. De esa manera es que me organizo y de esa manera es que alzo la voz y de esa manera es que pasamos leyes como las que hemos pasado hasta el día de hoy.
We have Jaime Contreras with the union that actually got the $15 an hour minimum wage for the airports. But with a union of 15, 16 members, we can't always wait for the union to do things for us. And when I look at how the unions have been helpful, I realize that I'm also part of that story. The union can't do everything by itself. I have to fight for my own rights. And as I often say, if I don't fight and if I were to wait for the union to do something for me all the time, then I would still be getting stepped on, be disrespected. So for me, organizing is incredibly important. We need to organize and be together. If someone says there's a march going on and it's restaurant workers, for example, and I don't work in a restaurant, it doesn't matter. We'll still be there. I'll still have 60 people on a bus. No, not one bus, 3 buses, 4 buses from the community. We'll organize and we'll be there. And that is how we pass laws, and that's how we were able to pass laws that help us. And so that's what I am incredibly proud of, organizing.
So we have used protective concerted activity in our favor. My store was posted from the labor board, and in the posting it said we had the right to organize and we had the right to protective concerted activities. Our workers were cut to like 1 day a week, like I was talking about. So we kept going at our store manager, and one day he was just like, oh, I can't take this anymore. There was like 20 of us, right? And we're like, okay, well, give us something. You're going to give us something. We're not going away. We're here to stay. And so actually we did so many actions and we had community with us that he didn't have a choice. So he says to us, well, okay, whoever really wants to talk about this, come to personnel. Well, he thought workers wouldn't come. Workers did come, and we shut the door behind him. When he's standing there, he's like, oh my God, what I do here? But so he gave us what was called open available shifts, that workers, there's no workers in these shifts, but you have these available for workers, and you cut their day to 1 day a week. Come on. But so this was then put in our systems in the stores across the country. So if you get 1 day a week, you can go back there to those CBL terminals and look and see what available shifts are open. It may not be in your department, but it will give you 40 hours a week. So that happened due to the fact of protective concerted activity. So it is a good thing to know that you have the right to do that in your workplace.
I think we have time for just one more question. Is there any? Go ahead. And then, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you all so much for this incredible panel. So especially in the context of Me Too and the intersection with labor, I've heard a lot of talk of all the ills that come with tipping. And as some of you mentioned, how it can pressure you to accept sexual harassment and all these other pressures that come with it. So I'm curious to hear whether you are all in favor of the abolishing the practice of tipping altogether, or if it's simply increasing the tipped minimum wage or getting rid of the tipped minimum wage, but still allowing for tipping, and kind of where the labor movement is on that question.
So we've been working with, I mentioned we have 500 restaurant owners across the country that are working with us, and we've been working with many of them on one fair wage, which is a policy fight to have one wage with tips on top. Many of them have talked to us about, really based on everything that the research is showing and what we've shared with them, we really need to go all the way and just get rid of it altogether, as was done in Europe. So we are supportive of that move with employers who work with us, who guarantee that workers are going to be making in wages what they used to make in tips. So the best example is Danny Meyer, founder of Shake Shack and Union Square Hospitality Group, who we worked with over a period of a year to convert his restaurants to what's called hospitality included, which is no tips or gratuities whatsoever. Everything is included in the price of the meal. And in that case, we worked with him on a very inclusive, transparent process that he's now paying his workers $30 an hour and up. So, and we have other employers around the country who are similarly paying workers $25, $30 an hour when they got rid of tipping. So we've been helping, after we helped Danny Meyer, another 300 restaurant companies came our way that we've been helping to move in this direction. And we've actually are in the process of starting a guaranteed loan fund to help restaurants who want to move in that direction, providing training and technical assistance, and getting city council members across the country to pass local incentives bills to help employers who want to move in that direction. All of that is the long-term game on top of really the intermediate fight to actually make sure we all have what we had in feudal Europe, which is one wage with tips on top. And I want to let each of the members of the panel, because we're closing out, just say some closing words about what you're hopeful about and what people should be thinking about as they go forward to the next 80 years of having even better protections and rights for workers.
So for me, what I'm hopeful about is that, I mean, personally, that this industry is going to be revolutionized. I mean, for practically nearly 30 years, the tipped minimum wage was frozen at $2.13 an hour. And it's only now, like, we've been able to awaken the consciousness of a nation to say, you know, this is inhumane. You can't expect people to live on $2 an hour and practically be subsidized on tips. So I don't know if the practice of tipping will be eliminated, you know, instantly. I think it will eventually be phased out. But my hope is that the connotations associated with tipping, as you brought up with, you know, Time's Up, Me Too movement, that a lot of the harassment will end, a lot of the, you know, dangling or power play between the patron and the server is going to end. So that's what I'm hopeful for.
Bueno, yo también pues tengo esperanza, ¿verdad? Porque la esperanza es la última que muere. Y tengo esperanza que, así como va a ir incrementando el salario mínimo de $15, un día vamos a llegar a ganar $24 la hora, no 15. Entonces, simplemente los dejo con el pensamiento de que cada uno de ustedes ha escuchado nuestro propio testimonio, que a pesar que hemos sido pisoteadas, no nos hemos quedado calladas. Hemos exigido nuestros derechos y me gustaría que ustedes pensaran en más mujeres que hemos sido abusadas y nos hemos quedado calladas, más mujeres que trabajamos duro y no exigimos nuestros derechos. Así es que si alguna de ustedes se inspira en organizar, ya sea que usted lo está viviendo o no lo está viviendo, pero puede empezar organizando a más mujeres, ya sea jóvenes también, porque nuestros jóvenes van a los restaurantes después de escuela a buscar un part-time, igualmente son explotados. Así es que ese es mi pensamiento para ustedes. Gracias.
I am also very hopeful because hope is the last thing to die. I know that we're fighting now and we've had some luck with this and raising a minimum wage to $15 an hour, but maybe one day it'll be $24 an hour. So I'd just like to leave you with the thought of, you know, and hoping that you having listened to our testimony here, that, you know, you won't be quiet and that you yourselves will organize and encourage people to organize. We want people to, and especially in the case of women, we want them to know that, you know, you don't need to stay quiet if you're abused at work and that you can demand your rights. And I really just hope that this does serve as an inspiration to people to get out there and organize in their communities, you know, not just for women, but also for young people who are looking for a job, you know, maybe at a restaurant after school, part-time. They're also exploited. So I really hope that you guys all go out there and organize, and I do have a lot of hope for that.
Well, one of my biggest hopes is that we can continue to educate workers in the country about their rights. We all have federal rights. A lot of workers don't understand that. So for me and our organization, we want to continue to educate workers and stand with them across the country. And we also want them to now know that technology is one of the best ways to get there. Thank you.